Wow! You're jolted awake by a sound you don't recognize. It's not the groan of old pipes or the slam of a neighbor's door. It's boots, dozens of them, pounding up concrete steps in unison. Radios crackle in clipped English. You peek through the curtain, and that's when your stomach drops. Unmarked SUVs flood the parking lot. Doors left open, lights off. The only thing louder than your heartbeat is the silence they bring. Then bang! A battering ram shatters the entry door of Unit 206. You live in 210. You don't know who they're here for. No one does. There are no warrants passed around, no names shouted, no Miranda rights read, just flashlights and commands. A toddler screams down the hallway, echoing like a siren. A woman clutches a bathrobe with one hand and a green card in the other. She's not even undocumented. It doesn't matter. This wasn't supposed to happen. ICE didn't notify local law enforcement. They didn't give the building management a heads up. They didn't have to. Under new expedited protocols, large-scale residential sweeps are justified through internal administrative warrants, which judges don't review. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know your location and what time it is where you're watching from, and let's go on the journey of today's story together. You hear your neighbor shout, "They have no right be here." Then a thud. Then nothing. At 5:12 a.m. on a Monday in Riverside, California, 38 ICE agents stormed an apartment complex housing 86 families. It wasn't a high-risk location. It wasn't a hotbed for organized crime. It was where people scraped rent together, shared coffee on balconies, left bikes leaning against fire hydrants. And then just like that, it became the front line of a war most Americans don't even realize exists. By sunrise, 9 doors are broken, 15 people are gone. It's barely light outside now, but the street is already swarming with confusion. You stand barefoot in the corridor, watching agents file out like they're clocking off from a shift at a warehouse. No one tells you what just happened.
You may use gas.
No one needs to.
You
already know.
Secondary exposure to that
The
gas.
apartment
So I just
complex
want
at
you
the
to be
center
aware.
of this chaos isn't fancy. It's the kind of place where old couches sit on balconies and kids' shoes gather by front doors. Families from Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, and El Salvador call this place home. Some work double shifts at the poultry plant out in Ontario. Others clean houses in Claremont. Many of them don't sleep more than 5 hours a night, always on edge because everyone's heard the rumors. But no one expects it to happen here. Not like this. The building's security camera, mounted by the laundry room, caught the moment 4 unmarked vehicles pulled into the lot. Later, reporters from The Guardian confirmed what many suspected. No one in the complex had outstanding warrants. At least not real ones. ICE had used administrative warrants, unsigned by judges, based on what they called community tips. Those tips, it turns out, were likely driven by anonymous online submissions, according to an ICE source speaking under condition of anonymity to ProPublica. And this was no isolated incident. In the weeks leading up to the raid, ICE had ramped up similar unannounced complex sweeps in cities like Nashville and Fort Worth. A revealing line in a recent ICE.gov bulletin read, "Target-rich environments allow for high-yield enforcement in minimal time." That language isn't accidental. It reduces families to data. It translates neighborhoods into hunting grounds. The residents weren't hiding. They were sleeping. Children were pulled from bed by strangers in tactical vests. One man in his 60s was detained in his pajamas and later released because ICE had the wrong person. They didn't apologize. Outside, local TV stations gather, but no one wants to talk, not after what happened to that other family down in Bakersfield, where a neighbor gave an interview, and ICE came back the next day. You remember the boy's voice first, thin, uncertain, echoing down the stairwell. "Mom?" he called once, then again. When you reached the second floor, he was standing alone, his socks soaked in something from the kitchen orange juice, maybe. The front door of Unit 208 was off its hinges, leaning awkwardly in the frame. The smell of insulin hung faintly in the air. Inside, chaos. A half-eaten bowl of oatmeal on the table, a dog still barking from inside a crate, and 9-year-old Jamie trying to shake his grandfather awake. He didn't know what had happened, only that ICE agents had come in yelling, that his mom was shouting in Spanish, and that someone pushed her against the fridge and cuffed her wrists. His grandfather, diabetic and barely mobile, collapsed on the floor during the commotion. No one stopped to help. That family had lived here 5 years. Jamie's mother, Lourdes, worked nights cleaning medical offices. She paid her taxes, kept receipts, even kept every piece of mail from USCIS. But none of that mattered when the agents came. Lourdes was on a list. They wouldn't say why. At the holding facility, she was asked 3 times whether she'd ever committed a felony. She hadn't. There was no record, but her name was in the system. By the time Jamie's uncle arrived to retrieve him, 4 hours had passed. The apartment was still in shambles. His grandfather had been transported to a hospital, conscious but incoherent. Jamie kept asking if his mom would be home in time to pack his lunch. Lourdes was moved between 3 facilities in 24 hours, first to Adelanto, then to Otay Mesa, then to a temporary holding cell near Calexico. In an ICE intake report later published by the Marshall Project, her case was listed under administrative non-criminal hold. Meanwhile, Jamie's drawing his mom, his grandfather, and himself at the dinner table was confiscated during his first visit to the detention center. Security protocol, the guard said, before tossing it into a bin. You want to believe it's a mistake, but nobody ever calls to say that. You dig for answers, the way anyone does online, late at night, hunched over your phone with your screen dimmed. You type her name into TRAC's database, but nothing comes up. That's when you realize not everyone even appears. TRAC's July 2025 update shows nearly 34% of ICE arrests that month involved individuals with no listed criminal background. The data gap? Huge. Intentional? Maybe. Out of the 15 people taken that morning in the apartment raid, 10 had no previous convictions, not even traffic violations. 3 were parents with school-aged children. 2 had pending asylum claims and were legally allowed to stay pending review. 1 was a TPS holder, temporary protected status, who ICE classified as non-compliant because his paperwork hadn't updated in the system yet. You scroll through ProPublica's ICE audit expose, where they dissect how agency officers often rely on what's called collateral apprehension. In layman's terms, if they can't find the person they're looking for, they take whoever's nearby. That's legal under current enforcement guidance. You also find the Guardian's long read about how ICE field offices now operate on regional quota systems, incentivizing volume over verification. One ex-agent even admitted, "We knew some of the arrests wouldn't hold up, but we had to keep the numbers up. That's how careers are made." ICE denies the use of quotas, of course. In an official response to Wired magazine, they stated, "All operations are conducted within legal frameworks. Yet somehow, families disappear and no paper trail follows." You think back to Jamie's mom, Lourdes. She didn't get a lawyer for the first 5 days. She was told she could waive rights to speed up her case. Nobody explained what that meant. Even more chilling, a leaked internal email from ICE's Dallas field office, posted by The Intercept, stated agents should avoid body cams in large-scale operations involving sensitive communities. The reason? To limit unnecessary scrutiny. But scrutiny is exactly what's needed. TRAC, ACLU, and the Migration Policy Institute keep showing the same thing. When ICE operates in silence, abuses multiply. When families vanish quietly, few people ask questions. And when administrative errors lead to deportation, who pays the price? Spoiler, it's never ICE. You sit at your kitchen table, jaw clenched, trying to understand the rules. Your fingers hover over the keyboard as you type into a search bar. Is ICE allowed to arrest without a warrant? The answers aren't comforting. Technically, yes, they can enter public spaces and detain removable individuals using internal administrative warrants, not signed by a judge. But your hallway doesn't feel very public. Your neighbor's apartment sure didn't. That's when the debate kicks in between what's legal and what's moral. On one side, there's the letter of the law. You find an op-ed from the Washington Examiner defending ICE's right to enforce immigration laws efficiently, especially in high-density housing areas where targets may reside. The article quotes a DHS legal advisor. Administrative warrants exist precisely for speed and safety. Judicial warrants would stall critical enforcement. Their argument is clean-cut. Enforce the law, protect the border, remove those who entered illegally. Period. But then, You watch a live stream discussion hosted by the ACLU featuring civil rights lawyer Maria Hinojosa. She holds up the Constitution and points to the Fourth Amendment. You cannot enter someone's home without a warrant, no matter their status. The minute you do that, you abandon American values. She tells the story of a man arrested in his boxers while holding his newborn. His green card was inside the diaper bag. Your screen buzzes with comments. Some people shout, if they're illegal, they deserve it. Others write, no child deserves to grow up like this. You realize the divide isn't just legal, it's emotional, spiritual. One side sees law as rigid, the other sees justice as fluid. And what happens when the law itself has cracks? When enforcement policies shift with each administration and lives hang in the balance of an ICE supervisor's morning memo? A Reddit thread links to an ICE manual that instructs agents how to strategically mislead during knock-in talks. One former agent, speaking anonymously to The Independent, admitted, "We tell residents we just needed to verify ID. Once the door opened, it was over." You think about Lourdes, about Jamie, about your own door. What's the law worth if it can knock and lie? The silence after the raid isn't calm, it's hollow. You feel it in the empty parking spot where Lourdes used to park her silver Honda Civic. In the way Jamie no longer waits by the gate after school. The complex feels amputated, parts of it missing but not acknowledged, and that's where the trauma festers. In the days that follow, 4 families leave without a word. They pack what they can into overnight bags and disappear. No goodbyes, no forwarding addresses. One woman, Flor, leaves a note on her mailbox. "I couldn't protect my daughter. I'm sorry." The property manager, quiet, white-knuckled, posts a generic memo. "Due to recent activity, please direct all safety concerns to building security." But there is no security. Only neighbors pretending not to notice that half the kids on the 3rd floor didn't show up to school this week. You hear from Mateo, a maintenance worker. He tells you about Maria, who miscarried 2 days after the raid. She wasn't even touched, just saw ICE pounding on the neighbor's door and collapsed. When she arrived at the hospital, there was no heartbeat. The hospital listed it as trauma-induced spontaneous abortion. No one calls it a raid in the paperwork. They just call it stress. A local pastor named Elias tries to hold a prayer circle in the courtyard. He invites everyone. No one comes. Later, he tells the Marshall Project this was more than a raid. It was a message. Social workers from a local nonprofit attempt outreach, handing out flyers in Spanish about rights and trauma resources. But most residents won't open the door. They fear it's a trick. Some report that ICE has returned before pretending to be service reps. You check WLWT News and find that across 3 states, over 80 people have been detained this week in similar complex-level enforcement actions. The trend isn't slowing, it's growing. ICE has learned that fear works better than fences. You think back to Jamie's drawing, the one he lost. What did it look like again? A dinner table, his mom smiling, his grandfather pouring juice. There's no drawing now, just silence, just gone. You watch the evening sun pour through your window, casting long, tired shadows on the floor. The quiet feels heavier than it used to, like something's been taken from the air, not just the people. You keep turning the same question in your head. What kind of society calls this normal? Normal. That word sits like a stone in your throat. You scroll past a CNN headline. ICE raids target complexes as efficient deterrence. Efficient deterrence. It sounds like language borrowed from an instruction manual, not a government agency. But that's what it's become, deterrence by design. Not just stopping people from coming, but punishing them once they're already here, settled, surviving. The cruelty is intentional, predictable, even operationalized. The Migration Policy Institute recently published an analysis showing that ICE has been increasingly using psychosocial disincentives, fear, public spectacle, unpredictability as policy tools. Not border walls, not fences, but humiliation, psychological siege warfare. It's cheaper than drones, more effective than detention centers, and impossible to measure in dollars. You find yourself remembering things differently. That time Lourdes helped your mom fix the shower curtain. That afternoon Jamie helped the super carry groceries. You didn't know them well, but you knew them. And now it feels like they were part of some other country. Some other America. The version we pretend still exists. You stumble on a Wired magazine op-ed that lays it bare. When fear is policy, compassion becomes rebellion. You sit with that. The knock at the door, the boots in the hallway, the silence after. They're not side effects, they're the point. They remind everyone left behind that we are watched, that we are vulnerable, that we are less. ICE's social media account, still glowing blue with official pride, tweets another successful removal, safety first. But whose safety? Maybe it's not about law at all. Maybe it never was. Maybe it's about reminding people of their place so they stay in it. You breathe deep and hold the thought longer than you should. If we don't resist this version of normal, then it's ours. You wake up one morning and realize the quiet is no longer temporary. It's routine now. No kids knocking on your door selling candy for school. No music from that upstairs unit where birthdays used to spill into the courtyard. It's all less. You go to throw out the trash and notice the mailboxes. Half of them still carry names of families who are no longer here. The Cruz family, the Mendozas, the woman who always made tamales on Saturdays, you never learned her name. Their names are now memories, scratched out, replaced by emptiness. And yet something in you shifts. You realize you're not just a bystander to this. You're a witness. That matters. And maybe, just maybe, you can do something with that. So you start with knowledge. You download a Know Your Rights flyer from the ACLU. You tape one to the laundry room bulletin board. You print 2 more and slip them under your neighbor's doors. You start following journalists on Twitter, ones who document ICE abuse, who share legal resources, who name the agents responsible when no one else will. You talk to the pastor, Elias. He tells you something that stays with you. Compassion is a muscle. If you don't use it, it goes weak. And in a country like this, you have to lift every day. You go to a community meeting. You stand in the back. You don't speak, but you listen. You learn that 70% of people taken during ICE raids never get a day in court. You learn that your state has legal aid groups, and they're overwhelmed, but they exist. You write their numbers down, just in case. You watch a live stream vigil held in Jaime's school parking lot. His teacher speaks. She's crying. So is the librarian, and you post. You write their story. You don't embellish. You don't filter. You just say what happened. You say her name, Lourdes. You say the boy's name, Jaime, and people respond. They ask, what can I do? You tell them, start here. Know the names. Share the truth. Refuse to look away. Now just breathe. You've sat with something heavy, heavier than most people let themselves feel. And if you made it here through the noise, through the pain, through the strange and specific silence, then you've already done more than most. This story isn't just about ICE. It's about proximity, about how close we all are to someone who could be taken. A neighbor, a student, a coworker, a parent waiting in the carpool lane. This happened in the space between floorboards and fire alarms. It happened where people pray, where they braid their children's hair, where they save leftovers for lunch. And that's what makes it unbearable. And that's what makes it unforgettable. You're not powerless. You're not voiceless. You're not unqualified to care. You don't need a law degree to say this isn't right. You don't need to be directly affected to say this hurts. And you don't need permission to act. All you need is clarity and maybe a little discomfort. So tonight, when you look out your window and the lights across the street feel fewer, remember that absence matters. That disappearance is a policy, and your voice, yes, yours, is the resistance to it. Let this be more than a story. Let this be what sparks the next question, the next conversation, the next act of stubborn, quiet courage. They counted on your silence. Let them count wrong.